Okay guys, here's the typographic poster. What you're going to do is basically sculpt with words. I'm in Pixlr right now, and if I turn on the layer that has my image, I have an image of a barn that I took, and I'm going to kind of fill this in with words. The major elements of this barn are vertical, these big vertical slats, so I thought I'd put some words along them, and I went with Barnes and Noble, and I started going with that. Um, Not that Barnes and Noble has anything to do with a barn, but I thought it was a good place to start, and then I threw some words in that I also thought would help um, make the point. So if I zoom in, you can see I did whole negative space as I'm starting to construct what would be the negative space there inside the barn. Um, how to do this? It seemingly might be simple at first, and there's a couple little steps that you should just get used to. Once you get the workflow down, it'll go a little easier, but it does take a little work. First thing you want to do is go up to your layer. When you make a new image, and you want to do this, you want to go File, New, Image, and make it smaller than 800 wide. Make it 500, 520 wide is fine, that sort of thing. And then you want to go to Layer, and you want to open Image as Layer. Okay, so here's my image. And what I want to do is use the Type tool. That's right here, the letter A. I'll just tell you, most of the programs, it's the letter T. But at any rate, you can go in and type, and I'll type word Barnes. And what's cool about the Type tool in Pixlr here is if you just kind of click on the font and then scroll through all of these fonts, it has most of the default fonts that are in there. It actually previews for you without you having to highlight the font. Say like that one. And if you want to make a change to that font, then you have to click over here and then go back and say you just want to do the regular word Barnes, not with an E. You can do that, and then you can also change the size, make it bold if you want to change the color, whatnot. Looks good. Do all your editing there. If you want to go back, just click with the Type tool and you can manipulate the font. That's all nice. But we need to turn it into an image. We need to do what's called rasterize it. In other words, we need to turn this into a image-based, pixel-based layer. So you go up to Layer, and you're going to have to do this for each one of your layers. You're going to have to go to this one here called Rasterize Layer. And of course, make sure that you're checked on the layer that you're going to be wanting to manipulate. Now you can go up to Edit and Free Transform. You're going to want to get used to just using the key command because nobody wants to go up to these menu items 500 times. It's going to take you forever. Just remember, it's Control T. Pretty easy thing to remember. Well, I'll just click this for now since I'm there. And now you can rotate, you can scale, you can even invert and do all that stuff. But look what happens as I get really big, it pixelates because it's no longer a vector graphic. Now it's a rasterized font. It's more like a picture now. And that's okay. But let me see, let me pop this guy in here where I want him to go. For me, I need a lot of my font to be sort of pushed down and vertical so I can make up the slats in my barn here as I go. And that looks great. And then you click off, it'll always ask you if you want to change. And I say yes. A couple other things you can do is you can see I get all of these whole negative space. These are all layers that I've used to create the barn door, and you can't see them in this layer palette. By the way, to expand the layer palette, if you're not familiar, go to the lower right corner and you can click and drag. Okay, I'm going to uncheck so it's not visible. You can see now what I've done here. And I'll zoom in using my off-screen navigator. And you can see what I've done. Hold down the space bar, you can move around. That makes up my doorway, right? Well, eventually I'm going to get rid of this picture. And your goal is to use the picture to trace and then use words to create or sculpt, if you will, a typographic poster. Well, I've used the word Barnes and Noble, shadow tour of the country, effing horizon, Barnes, books, barns, positive negative space, things that might be sort of loosely associated with a barn, but we've all seen a house, so actually I'm really getting very close to almost finishing this thing. Um, you don't need to fill in every little bit. When I check this on, you see in the image, you go, I need to fill in all this detail, so on and so forth. You don't have to. You want to be sort of economical with your work, and in a way, I could use the word hold negative space over and over to fill in the barn door area. So what's really cool about this is I can go and duplicate these layers. So say for instance I want to duplicate that whole negative space. I'm going to go up here, I'm going to highlight the layer I want. And then I'm going to just right click it and duplicate layer. You can see it filled in another one below it. And of course you could do that, layer for layer. Move each one down if you want to. I'm going to just right click and duplicate layer like a whole bunch of times. And now you can see it's starting to darken down right there. I know where that original one was. And now I can just click on the layer, drag it down, click on the layer, drag it down. And yeah, I know it's a little hard to remember which one's which. It's okay. Just click down a little farther. Try and figure out where you're at. Try and remember where you were. That sort of thing. Now I'm starting to get something that's actually texturally really cool and unique and makes up what looks like a doorway. It wasn't really hard. I just had to copy and save it. Last thing with the layers palette, if I wanted to combine all these layers, I could do it a couple ways, but the easiest way is if I have a lot of these hold negative space layers. It just tells you what the type is, and that's what it names the layer. I can uncheck all these other layers. It takes a second, but if you uncheck these layers, now I have just those layers there. And what I can do is I can right click on them and I can go now with merge visible. And all that does is it took all those layers and merged them together, and I can turn them back on now. You can see that it renamed my layer. It actually made it layer 2. You go, oh, what happened to everything that I just merged? It just renamed everything. All those merged layers, it just called it layer 2. So once you have a bunch of layers, say you're trying to merge them all together, it's not going to combine all the names. It'll just rename it for you. Don't feel like you have to completely fill in your object, but do choose words and different size fonts that will make for an interesting image. Remember, you're trying to sculpt with words, you're trying to trace the object, sort of. And have fun with trying to make some associations that are maybe a little bit outside of the box. Something that could be associated with your image, but at the same time is interesting for your viewer to see.